Okay, for coming. So grateful for February. February. Next up is hello and welcome to another video. My name is Heather, and as always, I'm reading with a vengeance, and I hope you are too. If you've been here before, I'm so grateful to you for coming back. If you're new to my channel, very warm welcome to you. So happy to have you here. I'm getting right to it today just because this was like one of those spur of the moment, zero preparation for this video. And I just want to get it done before my husband gets home. So usually I do a little chit chat about what's been going on in my less than exciting life. Happy life, but pretty low key nevertheless. Today I'm here to talk to you about the books that I read in the first half of February. So my book count is going to be relatively low in the next couple of months because I am judging the Booktube prize. Even though I'll be reading books, the books that I read for the Booktube prize, I won't be able to talk to you about until the beginning of April because the end of the first round is March 30th. If you want to know more about that, I will link the video that I did in which I talk about the books that I'm going to be reading for the Booktube prize down below. But books is books, so let's get started talking about them. So the first book I'm going to talk about, you're not even going to see me talk about it because it is a Booktube prize book, but I'm going to record my review here and then cut it out and put it in that future video. So forgive me, but I do want to tell you that I read it, and that is A Family Meal by Brian Washington. This is my first Brian Washington. This is a contemporary literary fiction with themes of LGBTQ, and you will hear all my thoughts about it in April. The next book I'm going to talk to you about is There by Tommy Orange. This has been on my TBR for a very long time, and I bumped it up and decided to read it because Wandering Stars is the follow-up to it, and that is coming out very soon. I believe I featured it in my new books that are coming out in February. So many people recommended this book to me and encouraged me to read it, and I am sad to say that I'm going to have an unpopular opinion here. I didn't dislike this book. I listened to this book. It was very well narrated. I really liked the premise. I really liked the characters. I really liked the different stories that are told with the different characters. The problem I had with this book is that there were a lot of characters. So just a quick synopsis on this book. You're following 12 different characters. They all have Native American background, history, ancestry, and that's not their only connection. They are connected in other ways as well that you learn about as you read about each character. And then there is an event, a big powwow that is going to happen, and they're all going to be going to this powwow for one reason or another. And through learning about these different characters, you're learning about the Native culture, you're learning about how the systematic slaughter and oppression and abuse that has been inflicted upon this entire population of people, how it continues to affect their lives on the daily currently. And I appreciated learning about that. I appreciated that a light is being shown on these injustices, as it should be. I liked this book. I would have really loved it had there been maybe 8 characters or maybe 6 characters and got as in depth with those characters as Tommy Orange did with 12, because not only were we learning about 12 different characters, you're going back and forth in time. Some of the characters are related to each other, and it was very confusing when they went from talking about one character to another, trying to figure out where in time you are. So I had a really hard time with that. It made it very difficult to connect. Once you're at the end and you're at the powwow and all the characters that you've been learning about and following throughout the book, they're all there in their places, so to speak, then it all kind of connects. But I wanted it to connect a lot sooner than that. I wanted to see the connection between the different characters earlier because I feel like I would connect with the characters more if I saw the connection between them sooner. So I didn't love this as much as I thought I would. I didn't love this as much as I think a lot of you love this, and that bums me out. I'm glad I read it. Will I read Wandering Stars? I'm going to have to reread the synopsis on that one, so it really depends. Yeah, I'm going to keep it on my TBR for now. How soon I'll get to it, I don't know. I, again, perhaps would have had a better time with this if I read the physical copy, because then you could kind of go back and forth and remind yourself of who's who and where's where. So I really need to, I think, be a little bit more careful on which books I listen to now, because there have been so many recently that I remember saying out loud, I wish I would have read the physical copy, because it was hard to follow on the audiobook. And it's only been, I would say, in the past year that I'm having this trouble, so maybe this is a me thing. I don't know. Getting old is not for sissies. What are you gonna do? There. I liked it. I didn't love it. I'm glad I read it. Next up is Ruby Fruit Jungle by Rita Mae Brown. This is evidently the consummate coming out book. This is a coming of age story that takes place in the 50s and 60s, and it follows a young girl, Molly Bolt. And you follow Molly from the time she is a small child. She was an orphan and she was adopted by poor, uneducated Southern parents. And this follows Molly's life as she comes from very meager beginnings, but she still paves a way for herself in life. I didn't know what to make of this book when I first started reading it. And the more I got to know Molly, the more I absolutely fell in love with her. She is sassy, she's smart, she's independent, and she was way, way, way ahead of her time. I loved Molly. Molly knew who she was, knew who she wanted to be, and she wasn't going to change for anybody, and she wasn't going to make excuses for anybody, and she wasn't going to take anybody's shit. Molly knew from a very young age that she was smart, and she knew from a very young age that she wasn't going to get married, she wasn't going to have babies, and she liked women. And you follow Molly as she leaves her home. She has a very volatile relationship with her mom. Her mom doesn't like Molly's ways at all. Molly's mother believes what many, many women of the South at that time believed, and that is you grow up, you get married, you learn how to cook and sew, and you have babies, and that is it. If you have any kind of ambition to educate yourself or to make something of yourself, then that was believing that you were just better than everybody. And who the heck are you to think that you're better than anybody else? So Molly leaves her home and she goes to New York because she wants to be around people that she thinks is more like her, and she thinks New York is going to be that place. And she also wants to make movies as a career. She meets various colorful people. Anytime anybody questions Molly of who she is and what she's about, Molly stands up for herself and says, this is who I am, and this is the way I'm going to be, and I'm not going to change. The world needs to change and mold itself around me because this is who I was meant to be. And I just thought that that's really what pride's about, right? Pride in yourself and pride in knowing that you're the person that you're supposed to be. And I just really, really enjoyed this book. Some might say that there was very little character arc for Molly because she didn't really change much from the beginning to the end. And I think really that was the point. She grew up and she learned some things, but who she was as a person and who she believed herself to be, I mean, that was set in stone early on, and I think she was lucky for that. As you can see, I have a little tab here. What did I tab this for? So I wrote on the tab, Molly was way ahead of her time. And this is really just a conversation that Molly is having with one of her college friends about her sexuality. And her friend asks her, do you think you're a queer? And Molly says, oh, great, you too? So now I wear this label, queer, emblazoned across my chest? Or I could always carve a scarlet L on my forehead. Why does everyone have to put you in a box and nail the lid on it? I don't know what I am. Polymorphous and perverse. Shit, I don't even know if I'm white. I'm me. That's all I am and all I want to be. Do I have to be something? bless her heart. I love Molly Bolt, and I love Rita Mae Brown for writing Molly. I love that this book is out there for people who are having a hard time coming out. I mean, I'm not gay, but if I was, I would want to read this book, and I'm just super happy that it exists for the people that I think Rita Mae Brown wrote it for. But even as a heterosexual woman, I really enjoyed this book, and I would recommend it just for the sassy character that Molly is. I just think getting to know Molly is enough to enjoy this book, but this book is way, way more. The next book I read was Before He Kills by Blake Pierce. This has been languishing on my Nook forever. It was free. It is the first in the Mackenzie White series. And what I didn't realize before I started reading it is there are, well, how many are there in there? There are 14 books in the series. So, and the ratings get progressively better. Not that this one is poorly rated on Goodreads. I think it's at a 3.96. But anyways, I just decided to finally read one of the books on my electronic reader so that I can clear out that library as much as I'm trying to clear out my physical library. And it was less than 200 pages, so I knew I was going to be able to get through it quickly. Anyways, Before He Kills, we are following Mackenzie White. She is a young detective in a small Nebraska town. And this is a town that she grew up in, so people, I think, know her. It is a town that has kind of a small town mentality in that a lot of people, especially the people that she works with, resent the fact that she is so young and she's a woman and she's a detective in this small town police department. She is smart, she is skilled, and they resent her even more for that. But we also know that her father was killed under mysterious circumstances, and she found his body when she was, I believe, 7 years old. And there's a couple of flashbacks, but we don't know, at least in this first book, the exact circumstances of that death. So that has been unresolved in this book, and I feel like it's going to be something that she's going to be dealing with for several books in this series, if not the whole series. So who knows when I will get to the bottom of that little mystery. But in this book, she is on the case of a serial killer who is grabbing women from mostly strip joints. They are strippers. The serial killer is grabbing them after work and then stringing them up on a post and leaving them on display in some remote area of town to be found by whoever. So Mackenzie is on this case. She's got a partner who is resentful of her. She has a chief who doesn't really care for her either. But she is really working this case hard, and she is developing solid clues. And the more she works this case and is figuring stuff out and she's proving herself, the more her chief and her partner are kind of coming around to her. And so she is developing respect from her peers and her boss. It's a decent mystery. It's a decent story. I think Mackenzie White is written well. You connect with her pretty quickly. I think there's going to be more development for her as the series goes on. It's a series that I would say I would read the next in the series, but it's not one that I'm seeking out like some of the other series that I am reading right now. Like, for instance, when I read the first Will Trent book by Karen Slaughter, I mean, I wanted to read the second one immediately. Same thing with The Armand Gamache by Louise Penny. So I didn't get that same reaction for this one, but I liked Mackenzie. I liked where her character is going, and the writing was decent. There were a lot of typos. Like I said, this was free on my Nook. I think these are only available on electronic readers. I don't think I've seen any of Blake Pierce's books on the shelves. So, but that kind of thing really doesn't, typos don't bug me. I mean, unless there's so many that it's hard to read, I've never come across that, but I'm just putting it out there for you if that's something that annoys you. If you're looking for another detective crime thriller type series, and like I said, there's 14 of them. So if you're looking to start a series, I would recommend this. It was pretty decent. If I were to criticize anything, I would say, you know, at the beginning of the book, when you're learning about how her boss, the chief of police, doesn't like her, and anytime she says something in like a meeting with all the cops, you know, he rolls his eyes and he's very dismissive towards her. She starts to work the case, and she is developing good clues, and she's following up, and she's working very hard. Things are developing very well on this case. I feel like he changes his tune abruptly, and he like starts to get very chummy with her, to the point where I thought, this is a trick. The author is trying to trick me into believing that this chief is coming around and being supportive of one of his detectives, and then something else is going to happen and he's going to kind of turn on her or whatever. It just seemed out of character for this chief to go from rolling his eyes as she speaks to, oh, you're one of my best detectives. So I thought that was a little not really realistic, but you know, these are 180 page mysteries. I can't really expect too much depth, but it was fun. It was a fun read. Finally, the book that I want to talk to you about last, because it was my favorite so far, and that is Small Mercies by Dennis Lehane. This is his most recent book, and I've been wanting to read it ever since I heard about it coming out. And since I read Mystic River recently, I just bumped it up my TBR, and it was on my 24 in 2024. So I get to check that off in my little log as well. This book was so good. I really enjoyed it. It's the summer of '74 in Boston, and we are right on the cusp of the busing segregation events that happened during this time, and there's a lot of racial tension going on, and you're following Mary Pat, and Mary Pat is a late 30s, early 40s single mother. Her son has already died. He went to Vietnam. He came back messed up. He got into drugs. So she's already kind of struggling with that, and she is raising her 17-year-old daughter, Jules. One night, Jules goes out with her friends, and she doesn't come home, and nobody knows what's happened to her. So Mary Pat takes it upon herself to find out what happened to her daughter, where she is, and she starts asking questions, and she ends up asking the wrong questions to the wrong people. And the powers that be, that are the Irish mob, don't like it that Mary Pat is turning over these stones to try to find out what happened to her daughter. The same night that Jules doesn't come home, a young black man is found dead on the subway tracks. And so the police are investigating that, and it looks more and more like his death and Jules' disappearance are connected. So the story goes from there, and it was a wild ride. Now, if you're like me, you might go right to Goodreads and start looking at some of the reviews. And I'm going to tell you right now, there's a lot of people who hated this book because of how often the N-word is dropped. And it is dropped a bunch. But the thing is, this is 1974, and you're in not just Boston, but South Boston. Racial tension was high, and that word is dropped with a casualness that just doesn't exist anymore. In order to really get into the story and enjoy the story and appreciate the authenticity of the story, you have to immerse yourself in 1974 Southie. And not only did racism abound, I mean, it was just accepted as the norm, unwillingly by some, but accepted nonetheless. I mean, segregation was in effect still, and it's not like racism is gone now, but as hidden as it is now, it was loud and proud then. So in this book, the N-word is dropped many times, but it is meant to demonstrate what life was like then and there. This is an ugly term that is unfortunately a part of history, as embarrassing as it is for white people and painful as it is for Black people. So with that being said, this story explores, among other things, the devastating effects of not only racism, but generational racism. So back to the story. Mary Pat is doing what she can to find out what happened to her daughter, Jules. And when you have a mom who is trying to find out what has happened to her one and only child, that's one thing. You're going to have somebody who is very motivated to get answers. But when you have a woman who has nothing else to lose, then that bumps that motivation up tenfold. And you have a woman who grew up in the projects of South Boston, and she is one tough cookie. At first, you are going to very much dislike Mary Pat for how she talks to her daughter, how she talks in general. She is a racist, but you get to know a little bit more about Mary Pat, and this is one of the things that I think is really well done with some characters. You can't completely characterize a human being by one or two characteristics that they have. And I feel like I just said character a bunch of times, but you know what I mean. Yes, she's racist, but that's not all she is. And she has a character arc. She gets from point A to point B in this book, and I think Dennis Lehane does a really, really good job of getting Mary Pat from point A to point B. And I don't want to spoil anything for you, so that's all I'll say about that. As much as you will dislike her for her blatant racism, you are going to love her for her toughness. I mean, physical and mental toughness. She's got a determination and fearlessness that is it was just fun to read. So please don't be discouraged with the N-word dropping. I know it'll put a bad taste in your mouth. It makes me cringe too. I can't even say the word. I don't like to say the word. I'll drop F-bombs left and right, no problem, but there's just something about that word. I feel like just saying it just adds ugliness to the word. So I get it. I get why some people would just automatically hate this book, but I don't agree with that. It's just a demonstration of what things were like back then. And it just adds to the authenticity of the time and to the story. And it's a really, really good story. There is a lot going on in this book. If you liked Mystic River, I think you would like this book as well. I can't wait to get to more of Dennis Lehane's stuff. I'm going to read everything that he has written. I really enjoy his writing style. I love what he writes about. I love his characters, as flawed as they are. I am just having a really, really good time with Dennis Lehane. Yeah, Small Mercies, definitely recommend it. And it's my favorite so far this month. So that is it. Those are the books that I've read so far in February. Have you read any of these books? What did you think about them? I would love to know. What have you guys been reading so far this month? Do you have a favorite yet? I would love to know that too. Or you could just say hi down in the doodly-doo. If you're still watching at this point, please consider giving that like button a boop, and a subscribe would be great. Thank you so much for watching, and I will see you all next time. Bye-bye.